everyone. I am Brianna Rossett, the Office and Events Coordinator here at the Small Business Center, and today I have Shaun Bernstein here from The Right Stuff, and he is here to help explain a little bit more about blogging better. I just kind of want to go through a few ground rules for today. Just make sure you keep yourself on mute. You're more than welcome to keep your camera on if you'd like. If you have any questions at all, please direct them to the chat, and he will actually be answering all of your questions at the end of the webinar. So if you want to just start kind of jotting them down within your little chat box there, and then just send it in at the very end, you will get to all of your questions that you have. And just so you know, this will be recorded, so if you do not want your name mentioned at all, just make sure you just kind of black out your name, so you don't have to physically put in your name in your on your little, so you can see yourself at the very top. You can just right click on the three dots and you can just take yourself off that way. All right, and I'm gonna just pass it over now to Shaun.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming out this afternoon. Hopefully this is a little bit warmer than shoveling snow, which I think we've all, or a lot of us have done a fair bit of the past couple days. So thank you for staying warm inside and joining us. Welcome to Blog Better, using content creation as your secret weapon. I wanted to do this presentation because blogging is so often misunderstood. When you run your own marketing as a small business, it's so easy to get lost as to what to do next. There's ideas flying at you from all different directions, and it can be hard to sort of figure out that path. So I want to show you a trick that I have become fairly proficient at on how easy and effective blogging can be. So what we'll cover today: what is a blog? Who is reading them? What can blogging offer your business? Who should be blogging and how often should you be doing it? What should you be writing about when you're doing these blogs? And we're going to look at some tips throughout the presentation for great writing. I've sort of scattered them throughout, and I'll offer a lot of them anecdotally, and then I'm happy to sort of talk at the end. And there will be, as Brianna mentioned, time for questions. So we've built that in. This will not take the full hour, I promise, unless you have a million questions at the end, in which case I'm sure I can talk your ear off. But don't sweat it if time is tight. So a little about me and who I am and why I'm sitting here in front of you today. So my name is Shaun Bernstein, as Brianna had mentioned. To give you my 30-second bio, it says journalist turned lawyer turned storyteller. I've worn a few career hats, hence the multi-hyphenate that you see. I like to sort of, forge that path and find some really interesting ways to do that. So I had a journalism background and a journalism graduate degree, and I interned at CBC, the national broadcaster in Canada, for our American friends, and loved it. And when there were no jobs in traditional journalism, I wound up shifting gears and went to law school. And because I had a bit of an HR background as well, I worked in the field of employment law when I was working as a student and then practicing law as a lawyer. I represented employers and employees. Yes, I was the guy you call when you got fired, but I did so much more than that. I worked with a lot of small businesses, quite frankly, working at some of their employment issues, and larger businesses as well, and working with employees, helping to write contracts and do negotiations and all of that goes in. I always loved employment law because I love people. People are sort of what gives me energy and what makes me tick. But what I didn't love was the adversarial nature of law. I found that part very difficult. It doesn't suit my personality. I'm happy to fight for my clients, but I don't like to fight for fighting's sake. I spent 3 years on and off as a lawyer, and I was really writing the whole time. I wrote for firms that I was with. I wrote for a couple of the contract firms. I left law at one point and had a job with a large nationwide firm doing writing. That I left that to go back into practice, but I realized all along that writing was really my favorite part of all of this. I should also mention for this presentation's sake that I'm an award-winning blogger. I ran a blog as soon as I was called to the bar, so as soon as I became a lawyer, called News from the Break Room, because I had this background in journalism where I was able to sort of tell stories to people in a way that they could understand. And I had this legal knowledge and I wasn't working yet. So I said, what do I do with this? And my brilliant wife literally elbowed me in the ribs and said, "You're a writer, go and write." And it was the best advice that she could have given me. So I started up this blog, really sort of taking some case law, but just really sort of complex employment concepts that people needed to know about and breaking them down into very simple stories. It won 2 national law blog awards, the Clobbies as they're called. Yes, they are a real thing. And really why I had done it was my own personal brand marketing. I foolishly never monetized the blog, but I wasn't working. I didn't have a lot of money. I certainly had law school debts. And I realized for myself that content marketing was a great way to build up my professional brand. Cost me almost nothing to do, and I was able to build a strong professional reputation that helped me with future clients and work me into future roles. A slide I like to include a few photos about me so you get to know a little bit more about who I am. On the left is me with my weekly trivia team back when we were able to play trivia in person. I'm in Durham, a little further west, so that's down in Whitby. The middle one is me at my wedding, falling out of the chair for the traditional hora dance, where at Jewish weddings we do a circle dance, then we lift the bride and groom in chairs. I tumbled pretty good onto the crowd, so that is on video. I won't share that at the end of the presentation, but there's the photo of my face is one of shock as I'm falling forward. Uh, and me on the right is a young me with President Bill Clinton, because as I was always taught in sales and marketing, it's not who you know, it's who they know. So let's get to the topic at hand today. Um, let's talk about the history of blogs. They're really not new. Blogs have been around for about the past 2 decades. The term I found was coined in 1997. News sites started using them, I think, about 1998. And it was really in the early 2000s that they sort of started to gain popularity. The early ones were pretty primitive. They involved a lot of coding. So, you know, the blogs you saw were really sort of run by developers and people who kind of knew that back end technical work. But it didn't really become accessible to the general public until platforms came in. So if you're in your 30s or around that sort of generation, like myself, might remember sites like LiveJournal or MySpace that served similar purposes. These were sort of platforms that were created to give the broader public access to writing blogs. So really, anybody could start one. Most of the sites were free. A lot of blogs of sort of my generation were from these angsty teenagers who sort of used it as a way of keeping a diary that you know you didn't want anybody to read, but also wanted everybody to secretly read because you would just very covertly put yourself online. Um, some were funny, some were mopey, some were really introspective. It was a lot of people really writing just about their daily lives. It was a whole mix of everything you can imagine that is. And that's really what started to grow and expand the medium. And I think at that point, businesses really caught on and said, hey, there's a way to put some content out here. So, you know, they gained popularity as it became more accessible. I think of it like Facebook. You know, when I joined Facebook in 2005, where does time go? I guess time gets eaten up by Facebook. But when I joined Facebook in 2005, it was only for students at certain schools. You needed a school email address to sign on. Then it opened up to more schools, the general public. Today, it's almost unrecognizable from what it was when it started. It can be a great money-making vehicle for businesses, but you need to have the right content to be able to stand out from the pack. There's a lot of garbage and a lot of noise out there, so great content is what makes you stand out. You know, we talked about teens and blogs 20 years ago. Um, I don't think there's a lot of teens that are actively running blogs today that just complain about their daily lives. They feel like they're doing that on other media as things start to change. So blogs too have evolved. So I need a sip of water. Who's reading blogs today? Anyone can be reading your blog today, but it is important to keep a reader in mind when you think of your audience. When we think of articles sort of traditionally in the business sense, you might be thinking of sort of a very old-fashioned um, industry publication or peer journals, things like lawyers and doctors writing to inform each other about something within their field. A blog doesn't have to be that. It can be much broader. It's the chance to offer some thought leadership in your business, but with the public in mind. It doesn't have to be as long as War and Peace. A few hundred words with some really powerful imagery can become a great blog in the right circumstances. So what can blogs do for you? Blogs can be a really powerful tool depending on how you use them. Huge companies have used them through the years quite successfully. I was looking up some of the larger ones. Coca-Cola ran one for quite a long time. Walmart, Whole Foods, to offer thought leadership, get conversations going, have discussions among stakeholders. But we're looking here at the small business context, where I think is where they're most effective these days. The one thing they can do for you as a small business: traffic. When's the last time you were on a dead website? How could you tell it was dead? If a site's content is stagnant, or even worse, if it's stale, there's not much that's going to drive new traffic there. When your site is being analyzed, and it's being analyzed, I know you've done some digital marketing seminars through the Small Business Center. If a site's been looked at either by a potential client or by a search engine, they're always curious to see what's new. I recently saw a website who had a section of articles that they'd written. The most recent one was from 2010. They're all dated, and the most recent was from 2010. They had 06, 07, 08, 09, and it stopped at 2010. That's not helping that website's traffic one bit. It's noticeable. It looks like a really avoidable gaffe, and it's not doing them any favors. A site can look like a dated room or a dated building. It's not hard to keep things shiny, or at least keep them from collecting dust. So we spoke about dated websites and how easy it can be to tell. If you are referencing news and current events in the content that you're putting out in your blogs, for example, you don't want to be full of old stories. I'm currently redoing a site for a client who started a blog when they launched their law firm practice 3 years ago, and they stopped their blog after 2 posts. Why? Because they got busy, and so the blog just didn't take priority. And when you have a million things on the go, sometimes marketing is what falls through the cracks. It's great that it got busy, but it also makes their website look really tired. So if a potential client is visiting their current site, it's looking old and haggard, and you can tell. And sometimes the content itself will tell you that, but you can really quickly tell when you look at a blog in the last entries from, in this case, 2018. I call it the digital version of chipped paint. Do your clients know how to find you? Fresh content is what makes your site up to date and relevant for potential customers. I truly believe that blogging is an opportunity and should be seen as an opportunity for any business. Put yourself in your client's shoes. Do they know how to find you? There are industries that rely really heavily on written content, like law and real estate, for example, or have a number of clients in both. But there are opportunities in almost any industry, and you may not be picking up on them. So turn your mind, as we're talking about this, to what sort of unique content you could do, either that some of your colleagues or competitors are doing and you haven't quite jumped on that yet because you're not sure how to start, or that they're not doing it. It might be a really unique way to think outside the box about how to grow your online presence. What about something like social media, which is a question that I get all the time? Social media and blogging are really good companions, and they can go really well hand in hand. So for example, on my team in my agency, I work with a social media expert who is wonderful. And she can take a blog and turn it into, multiple pieces of content for different social media platforms. So she can take, one of my pieces and turn it into an Instagram post and a Facebook post and, content for LinkedIn, all sort of for an additional package that we offer. But it does take a lot of work to do it properly. And it's not something, if you're going to rely on, that you want to do haphazardly. You have to be very on trend. You don't want to do it half-heartedly. She charges the way she charges because to do it well, you have to be on these platforms constantly. If you're using Instagram, for example, you have to be really aggressively on Instagram responding to messages, available to respond to messages at all times. You want to use it to drive traffic, you have to put the work in. And that's not for everybody. And it's not for every business. It also might not be the right fit for your particular audience. It is a great fit for some industries. It might not be for yours, or it might not be for the crowd that you're looking to reach. But it always helps to have that content to back you up. The sites that I find and the businesses that I find that do social media the best also have really great content behind them to have that substance behind the flash. So let's talk about a couple tips. The most obvious one that people miss all the time, which is really why I'm in business, keep it simple. We're going to go through a number of tips in this presentation. There's such a misconception, and I see it all the time amongst professionals, because that's obviously the world that I came out of, that you need to write for your colleagues. You need to sort of put your academic hat on and get really sophisticated with what you're doing. That is not true. There's a reason why I believe it's the Globe and Mail. I think, at least that they did when I was in the business, writes to an 8th grade education level. The public comes from a really mixed background and generally has a really short attention span. So how can you tell someone what they need to know about you and your business in a really quick and engaging manner? There are ways to do this. There are ways to do this well, and there are ways to do this really badly. And I see both sides of it. So there are some strategies we'll go through. For example, I did this slide as an example of good and bad writing. I won't bore you with the one on the left because it's absolute nonsense. It says a lot of fancy words that say nothing. Good blog writing is simple, it's clear, and it avoids walls of text. The piece on the right doesn't say much either. I didn't want to really recycle old material here, but it does do a few things well that you'll notice. It's in plain language without too many unnecessary words, has short sentences, and it's broken down in a way that makes it easy to read. There's a misconception you have to, again, use these big words to show off your intelligence. I love tearing down that falsehood. As a lawyer, so many of my colleagues wrote blogs that only other lawyers could understand. And I mean, that really hit home when my wife, who's not a lawyer, read a blog that I used to read for research all the time. And she read one post and said, "This is the most boring thing I've seen in my life." And she wasn't wrong. It just was not written for a very highly great lawyer, very highly regarded amongst his peers, and great with his clients. But the writing was just not done for a public audience. As a student, I used to find that kind of thing super helpful, but as a communicator, it drives me crazy. Just because someone is intelligent or they have a big vocabulary doesn't mean to write something that someone else can understand. Keep your client in mind. The insider secret that I offer here is even your most intelligent readers are busy. They're busy professionals, and I, again, came from that sort of world, but usually they're reading something on one screen. They've got a phone over here. They've got a coffee over here. They've got someone else in the corner trying to get their attention. There's a million things on the go. So they're skimming at best. And you might have their attention for, a minute or two to hook them in with a lead. Otherwise, they're going to be distracted and onto something else and losing focus. So if you can get to the point quickly and do it clearly, it'll always work in your favor, catching someone's attention. The other big question I get with blogs is, what do I write about? So not all posts have to be about your business specifically. They can look at the broader industry. They can also really work well to answer questions your clients have proactively. If you're a real estate agent who wants to focus on first-time buyers, write about other issues that are facing first-time buyers. I actually am working with a real estate lawyer now who's doing a lot of Q&A pieces where she's doing that, answering questions that clients have proactively. Not even about really niche issues in her practice, but general real estate closing issues. We just made a closing checklist, for example. If you're offering a product, if you're in product manufacturing or sales, and you're offering a product that's targeted to women over 50, let's say, write about various other issues outside of your specific business that women over 50 are commonly facing, and how you can sort of casually weave in your product and how it may be able to help. I was recently working with a company that deals with a service for so the service for seniors specifically, and they write about a lot of seniors issues that aren't always directly linked to their business. They can always sort of find a way to link it back, but they're able to offer some content and some thought leadership that really gives their clients, their potential clients, something of value upfront from seeing their website. No matter what you do, if you have a target market, you don't have to speak to them exclusively for every piece, but really make sure that what you're doing will resonate with them. Not everything needs to be a hard sell. Should be a call to action. We'll talk about that. But not everything needs to be you yelling from the rooftops about why you're the best. Don't hesitate to do it when it's right to do it, but make sure you can really sort of offer that broader voice. I think it really pays off. How long should blogs be? This is the $1 million question that I get all the time. I throw in that range of 500 to 750 words. Too short, and search engines don't always pick it up. They can be finicky. Google is the bane of all of our existence because I see Brianna nodding. The second that you think you figured out their algorithms, they like to switch things up. They don't like to make things too easy for anybody. So, you want to have enough meat there. If you're doing, 100 words on a page, it might not get picked up, probably won't get picked up by a search engine. But if you're going over that 1,000 mark, as once in a while, we all have to do, if you're doing it too many times, you've lost the plot. If you can't tell your story in a short amount of words, I think you are going a little bit heavy-handed. There are exceptions to this. I have been writing for one client where we're telling complicated stories and everything seems to run long, but we're doing it in a newsletter format in a way that sort of readers are actually following through. So we're lucky there. But by and large, I say stick to that 500 to 750. It's not too crazy. It's not going to drown anybody. Lately, when I see LinkedIn, they have a new feature. They estimate how long it'll take you to read something. So it'll say, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. I look at those these days. If an article is going to take me 8 to 10 minutes, I either hesitate or I make sure if it's something I really want to read that I set aside that 8 to 10 minutes of my time. Otherwise, I know within 8 to 10 minutes, an email is going to come in, a phone call is going to come in, some distraction will come up. If something is 3 to 5 minutes, which usually that 500 to 750 words is, I think you're going to have a likelier chance of catching somebody's attention. So don't hesitate to be brief when it calls for it. And if you go a little bit over, that's okay too, as long as you stay somewhat engaging. How often should you be posting a blog? Really depends on your business and your clients and what your targets are. I see all kinds of different ranges. I have some clients where they sort of like to get something new once a month, and that works for them, and that works for their industry. It sets them apart. That's fine. I like to target biweekly. If you have a voice out there and you have a business where you're constantly dealing with transactional work and trying to get new faces through the virtual door, I suppose, at this point, then biweekly is a great way to sort of pick that up. It keeps you on a regular schedule. Monthly is better than nothing. I have other clients that are doing weekly posts. I have some colleagues that are doing, 8 to 10 a month. That's heavy. That's really heavy for a full blog. That's heavy. You got to have a lot to say in your industry. It's also whether you're outsourcing it, it's going to be a marketing budget. If you're doing it in house, it's going to be a lot of budget of your time. So if you have the time to do it, hey, then if it works for you. But that's a tall order when it gets to that kind of frequency. Next is my absolute favorite tip. Write what you want to see coming through the door. We talked about what to talk about. This is my main mantra of blogging. Yes, blogging is a place for you to share some thought leadership, but it really all comes back to your client. So what is it that you want to see attract into your business? If there's and I talk to professionals all the time if they're dealing with multitudes of issues, lawyers especially, but financial professionals, um, et cetera. If they're in any sort of service-based business and they deal with a dozen different things, if there's a specific area that you really want to target, write about it. I have a real estate client, a different one that I mentioned, who is doing a lot of downsizing work. She works with a lot of older homeowners are looking to downsize. We're doing a three-parter on downsizing issues and looking at sort of a multitude of issues, but breaking it down into three pieces, specifically about downsizing. She's then going to print afterwards and use as a pamphlet or a brochure. Talk about the things that you want to see. I do believe there's a real attraction here. You become a bit of an expert voice on that issue from everyone who sees your site and says, "Oh, so and so speaks a lot about this. They know what they're talking about. They're putting out some great stuff. I need to call them next time I have this issue come up." I used to work in media. That's how media picks it up as well. When we're looking for somebody to talk about an issue as an expert on, TV or radio or a newspaper, you're looking for a source. You're going online. You're seeing who actually offers some great thought leadership about something. That's how it all, and that's usually great publicity media, but that's a lot of how it generates. So there is a real art to that, writing what you want to see coming through the door. Facts tell, stories sell. This is something I learned in my sales career as a teenager, probably over 20 years ago. And I think it's true across the board. Remember, you're trying to keep your readers' interest, and stories are a great way to do that. If you ever read a newspaper or a magazine article that really hooks you in, that great lead is usually an opening story. There's something in there that just clicks and resonates with you that gets you to keep on reading. Stories are not only what's going to engage a reader, they're relatable. People see themselves in stories. If you're telling the story of somebody that you've helped in your business solve a problem for, your reader will relate to that. For example, and I keep pulling it back to lawyers. I'm sorry to do that. I know no one wants to hear about lawyers, I assure you. Um, sorry, the only face I can see is Brianna's. So when she smiles, I get the sense that I'm on track of something. Um, Lawyers love writing about legal cases because they're interested in that small nuance of a change in the law. That stuff is so boring. Cases are usually incredibly boring. They're now written in plain language, these court decisions. But to just read about a case, by and large, you're not going to be interested. What a lot of lawyers miss when they're writing, every case is a story. Whether it's a corporate matter or there's a person usually behind it, there's some sort of a human story of somebody who really went to battle for something. That's interesting. That's where there's actually a story there to tell. In so many industries, and that one especially, but in others, there's concerns about privacy. Oh, telling someone's story, and there's going to be privacy concerns. I understand that. Believe me, it's my colleagues that wrote those privacy laws. Uh, but you can easily alter a story. You can tell sort of a broader story. You can take details out. Tell stories of people who have benefited from your product or you've helped in your business. Yes, testimonials do this and they're great. If you have testimonials on your site, all the better. But you can always do that and keep things fresh by sort of sharing these anecdotal stories. I think it's a great place to build off of a blog, is using it for that storytelling element. Hold the jargon. Your readers are probably not industry insiders. It's an easy pitfall to fall into. Um, and not just in law and journalism, I used to read a lot of content. Not everybody comes in with the same knowledge base and the same background and the same acronyms that you might use in your business or in your industry. And that's okay. You can cut the jargon out without talking down to someone. You just have to find another more creative way of explaining something. Or if you're going to include a key term, explain what it is that you're talking about before you use it over and over again. Remember, you're writing to educate somebody. You're writing so they come away learning something about what you do. So don't hesitate to be that teacher and to educate them. Talk to your reader. This doesn't always work for every situation, but I do most of my writing for client blogs in second person. It really speaks to you. You is whoever that audience is, and I keep it broad enough to address that broad audience. It's a style choice, and again, it might not work, but for content to be relevant to you, it has to speak to you. So even with this presentation, I'm generally talking to you as who knows how many people will be watching this once the recording is available, but I'm trying to speak to you as directly as I can. It would be silly if I did this thing entirely in the third person and pretended that none of you were here at all. I find that blogs are very much the same. You never know who's on the other end, but you want to make sure that it can actually resonate with the person that's reading the material. Here's another tip: break it up. We spoke about walls of text. They just do a disservice to your work. Short sentences, short paragraphs, subheadings. They're such an easy trap to fall into. Currently working on a site that is very dated, and the client has been paying regular funds to a social media SEO expert, sorry, forgive me, an SEO expert to promote the site. But the text on the site, just pure walls of text, almost impenetrable, no subheadings, very sort of one color on another, dense, no images. You don't eat a meal all in one bite. The same thing goes with content. Break it up into those bite-sized pieces. Keep your paragraphs short. You're just more likely visually to get somebody kind of sucked in, to get their attention. And then it'll be easier to read as they're moving forwards, that they know where they are. They know we have such short attention spans today. So know where they are, they'll remember where they started. They can actually get through a piece much easier, which is what you want. You want them to be able to follow along with what you're trying to do. Break it down. We talked about this and we mentioned the jargon, but I can't stress it enough. Blame that lawyer in me. Despite even beyond the jargon, break down complicated ideas and complicated concepts. There are going to be a lot of concepts in your industry, and that's fine. But remember that things that may seem obvious to you are not going to be obvious to a new reader. So avoid too many of these sort of insider details or insider baseball. Um, yes, I'll say that only lawyers are pretentious enough to still use Latin in everyday conversation, but every industry has, jargon and coded language. So if you're going to use something industry specific, throw a few extra words in there, break it down, make it simple, keep it accessible. It'll really keep a reader on track with your point. Everything that you do, and we talked about not doing hard sales, but every single piece of content needs to have a call to action. There needs to be some sort of closing, and it sounds like it's going to be obvious throughout your piece, but it's such a mental hook. It really hooks in visually and, in a deeper recess with your reader of, oh, I need to call this person. Your call to action is your clients knowing when, where, and how to find you. They need to know when they need your product or service. It's not going to help them if they're confused as to when they should call, or if they're, reading something way too early or way too late. Give them some idea of when they need you. They need to also know that you're easily reachable. Don't let them phone someone else while they're hunting for your number. So today, people have different methods of reaching out. People have different website techniques for reaching out. Telephone, I still love because I'm old-fashioned, but there's all kinds of forums you can put on your website, whether it's just a simple email address or an actual contact form like I have set up on mine. Or everyone gets into fancy technology today and all the bots that'll sort of let you reach out automatically. It's just about being reachable. So they have to know what you do, which is going to get through your content, who you are, which is going to get through your content, but when, where, how, and really the why they need to actually get in touch with you. That's going to be where your blogs are most effective, but do not leave that part out because it's a really key miss. So what does blogging actually cost you? It is a free way to build content. You can do it through your existing website, and if you're using a builder and you're already paying website fees, you could probably set up a page of doing a blog and doing some articles on there. So it's no more expensive than what you're currently spending on your web. But I see really two different categories of clients come into my business. Some are the ones that struggle with writing. They either are writing not in the right voice that's going to be accessible. Sometimes English is not their first language, and so they may be fluent. Their writing is very academic or formal. I have clients in that situation. I have other clients who just write very to the point, and that's how they learn to write. Is they're very to the point sentences, and it's not an attractive style of writing to build clients up. I have some clients who really struggle with what to say. They just don't see themselves as being able to write at all, and they're terrified of being able to sort of sit down. It'll take them, days or weeks to even get a sentence out on paper. There's no shame in that. That's the nature of the beast for some people. The other category that I have that's really quite common, especially if you're fortunate to have a busy business, is you're just too busy to write. And a lot of professionals in that situation where you might have this great idea for a next article or a next blog post that you want to come out, but it's sitting at the back of your desk along with a pile of stuff that is metaphorically on fire. And the stuff that is on fire comes first, and the stuff that pays the bills directly usually comes first. So your marketing gets really pushed towards that back burner. Not an uncommon situation at all. No shame in it. Sometimes it really does make more sense to outsource something like that and focus your time on the revenue generating activities that will be a little bit more direct. Pardon me, for a small marketing budget to outsource it, it's just going to be a win-win-win because you'll spend less time and you'll actually convert that content into even better revenue generating content. So what do I actually do? What does my agency offer? Here's my call to action, if you will. We handle a little bit of everything. So when I started writing, I realized that I could write great content, and I was sort of writing these early blogs for clients when I started my business, but I wasn't really providing any further support. If a site's getting no traffic at all, saying, here's a great blog post, now you find someone who reads it, that doesn't always work. So that's why I have the agency that I have, where I'm able to do a little bit of everything. And I bring in folks who can handle things like the web design, social media, digital strategy, the web writing, the content writing is all me. And I have a real mix of clients. I have some clients where they have no web presence and they're doing things totally from scratch, and we're building a new site and new design, new everything. That's great. I have other clients with very busy practices, whether it's, like I said, law, real estate, healthcare, education, service-based, product-based. They have traffic and they're doing well, but they need someone to sort of bring in that extra voice of content. They need that extra hand. They're either too busy to handle it themselves, or it's just not their strong suit, and they know that they need to get a wordsmith in there, and that's where I jump in. So it is a good chunk of what I do, and I'm more than happy to talk about how I can help you out. So we can have a little bit of Q&A right now. Any questions you have for me, Brianna can gladly open up the floor. Brianna, I turn it over to you. Thank you. I'll put a concluding slide on this. Shame on me. Well, this is me concluding before you do questions. So thank you very much for your time, for your attention. I will stop screen sharing and open it up to anybody who has any questions.
So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to throw them in the chat. I have a question myself. I said, is there a certain length of what a blog should be? And if so, is there a sweet spot?
Yep. So that was, we spoke about a little bit, the 500 to 750 is sort of what I target as a sweet spot, 500 to 750 words. I was too short.
Answering a phone call then.
Oh, no, sorry. No worries. Yeah, so I did slide on it. I said, look, too short. I think you're not picking up search traffic, and too